thanks for joining us for another episode of Tea and Trowels, the Florida Public Archaeology Network's video series featuring conversations with archaeologists about their research and what archaeology means to them. I'm one of your hosts, Emily Jane Murray, and I'm very excited to be chatting today with Nicholas Budsberg, who is a maritime archaeologist with the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Archaeological Maritime Program. Hi, Nick. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
Would you like to introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about your mug?
Certainly. So my name is Nicholas Budsberg, as Emily Jane said. I'm currently the administrative director, a maritime archaeologist with the St. Augustine Lighthouse Archaeological Maritime Program, which we shorten up to LAMP. But we are a research division of the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum. So if you've ever been to see our museum and lighthouse center, we offer lots of different programs, lots of different exhibits from shipwrecks and other sites that we have studied and excavated over the years. As you know, right now we are all closed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're very fortunate that most of our staff, right now all of our staff, can be paid in full through the Lighthouse, all working from home, doing things like sharing interviews online. But we're also working to build digital content to put the museum exhibits up. We're hosting a sunset, sunrise video experiences from the top of the lighthouse, so you can log in and see a live feed of sunsets and sunrises, as so many of us are stuck inside. But if you are able to support in these times, we're using the hashtag #LoveYourLighthouse for any posts or pictures that you've got from any of your visits. If you are able to donate, it is very much appreciated. As I said, we're all trying to keep the lights on here, and we don't know how long this will be going on. You can check us out at staugustinlighthouse.org. We are currently offering 50% off any future admissions tickets. So if you're planning a visit or you know you will in the future, now is a great time to get those. And you can also become a member, and that's one of the easiest ways for you to not only stay connected with what we're doing, get updates, but also to support us. So thank you again, and thank you to FPAN and Emily Jane and Tea and Trowels.
Yeah.
I do have my coffee mug as well. This isn't tea, this is coffee. I'm definitely a coffee person. But this is from Seattle, Washington, pretty close to where I'm originally from. The Center for Wooden Boats up there is a great spot, but I love their swag as well. So happy to always support fellow maritimers and ship nerds, as we like to call ourselves.
Awesome. Well, in honor of you and some of your interests in 16th century Iberian shipbuilding, I chose a mug today. It's from, I was a Girl Scout and I did a reenactment of colonial St. Augustine here in town. So this is my mug from there.
Awesome.
And it's not quite 16th century Majolica, but it is reminiscent of the Yayal pattern from one of those 16th century ceramics.
Love it.
So cheers.
I love it. Just don't break that cup anywhere around here because you'll really confuse archaeologists. It's going to be a tricky one.
Yes. Awesome. So why did you want to become an archaeologist?
Oh, man. I have to say that the first answer is probably the most trite answer. I was a young lad and saw Indiana Jones. And from there on out, I think your whole world is filled with the wonders and mysteries of travel and artifacts and what history means and all those kind of cool things. But certainly as I got older, I fell in love with traveling. That was always a big part of my life. And so trying to find a career that employed all of those aspects. And then one day I was looking, I went through probably every major available at our undergrad, trying to figure out what would be a useful degree to have. And I thought, let's go back to what's tried and true, what you love as a kid. And so I got into an archaeology major, an anthropology, really bachelor's degree with an archaeology major. And then slowly, after doing some Googling and looking around into all the different fields, I found nautical archaeology or maritime archaeology, but studying shipwrecks and especially that age of exploration. As you said, the 16th century is really when everything opens up and changes. Just not only Columbus crossing the Atlantic was a very big deal, but the ships that were employed from 50 years prior to the next 50 years after or so, right around 1500, there was the first people getting connected around the world. And so that really inspired me and thought, this is a really interesting time period. And we know next to nothing about these boats, how they're built, how they're sailed, what real impacts they had. They led to some of the biggest tragedies in our history, as many as some of the major glories from that European perspective. So it's all kind of really interesting and tied together, and I found a lot of meaning within all of that. So kind of led to my future career now.
I'm always, when I go talk to kids today, I'm always a little like, when they don't know who Indiana Jones is. Such a
I know, right?
character for us, but I guess he's out now. I don't know what the kids do these days. I don't know who they're archaeologists.
Well, we need a new young action star to take the gauntlet up. But I mean, it's funny because most archaeologists, they have a little bit of like, oh, well, not everything Indiana Jones was doing is a great thing to talk about with taking artifacts and, the whole mentality. But at the same time, it served as an inspiration for many of us. And so it's one of those catch-22s, so to speak.
Yeah, good jumping off point at least. Well, can you tell us about
exactly.
one of your research projects in 30 seconds?
Yes, that's hard because I'm long-winded, as you probably already know. But most of my research for the last almost decade now, about the last 8 years, I've been working on a doctorate through Texas A&M's Nautical Archaeology program. And I've been focusing on an early 16th century shipwreck in the Bahamas. And so I had the interest of the time period, but then when I started to study, we really only have about 4 shipwrecks we know about in the Americas that date to the first quarter of the 16th century, that really early exploration period. And one of them had been partially excavated, it had been looted in the past, but we really didn't know much about it. And it was in a very accessible area. There was a heavy marine biology component too, which was one of my other interests. And so for the last about 6-7 years, I've been being principal investigator of a project that's been studying that shipwreck. So we were out last in 2017, and we're hoping to go out again in the future with LAMP. But yeah, all up in the air at this point, with the pandemic has closed all the borders and limited money and all those other things. So it's an amazing site, and I can't wait to get back. But it's been one of those kind of bittersweet ones, knowing that you're not able to access it, even if you have the chance.
So what's one of your favorite tools that you use when you look at some of these sites?
Well, I'm a bit of a Luddite. I do like the old school pen and paper. And so pencil and Mylar is what we use as underwater archaeologists. Mylar is a waterproof paper, and most pencils work just fine underwater. But as I guess recently in the last few years, and something we used out in the Bahamas has been photo modeling, or using photogrammetry to build 3D models of sites. We don't get to use laser scanning devices underwater. The refraction that is caused by the water makes it so that the lasers don't get good data. And so we've always been limited to sound as the best remote sensing tool. But cameras kind of changed all that, because you can get an image that you can control the skew of it. And when you put that through a 3D program, you can get a pretty darn good, accurate representation of what you're looking at. In fact, I can show you a picture of that here. If you can see the model here in the background, this is built up of about 800 photos, and you're looking down on top of a shipwreck site. And so this is a 3-dimensional model that you can rotate and move around. It stitches all of these pictures together. One of the challenges of this one is that the wreck is partially submerged when the tide is going up and down. And so it's almost fully exposed when the tide is at its lowest, but then as the tide comes in, the shipwreck gets completely buried. So we think this is a late 19th century bug eye, or an oyster vessel, a commercial oyster vessel. Here is a centerboard trunk, which is a feature of sailing ships, that when they wanted to go out to sea, they could sail and they could drop the centerboard down. But when they were coming into shallow waters, like in a river where this ship is, then you could pull that centerboard back up and have a much shallower draft. But tools like this, you can develop this whole thing with about 30 minutes in the field of taking lots of different pictures from all sorts of different angles. But then you can kind of see how obvious the benefit is that you get to have something that is relatively well scaled. Here is one of our scale bars. It's a folding ruler in this case, but it helps us control the measurements of the model so that it all becomes fairly accurate. So this has become one of my favorite tools recently, trying to learn lots of things about it as we go. But it's also one of those things you can really use to help share all this stuff with the public. So it's a great research tool, but also a great outreach tool. And since I did mention I'm a Luddite, I still prefer good old-fashioned pen and paper. So this was a drawing we recently completed of that same shipwreck, but obviously it's not three-dimensional, but you can get things like the curves from measurements that we've taken and put them into the whole drawing. And you can really accentuate things that are very difficult to see in a photo model, like the frames that continue all the way underneath. You can measure these things and expose them and kind of get an idea of what they are and then draw them out. But a photo model, well, you'd have to completely uncover it all just to get that info. So it kind of gives you two sets of information, but helps you understand all that stuff.
I know we've been playing a lot with it, and I'm on a mission to try to figure out how to print some of these models. So hopefully we can get together and perfect that technology as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's great. With one photo model, you can do a lot, and that includes 3D printing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure folks hearing that you're a maritime archaeologist and you get to go diving and hanging out on boats in beautiful places like the Bahamas, I'm sure you don't have too many best worst field stories, but what's your best worst field story that you can now laugh about?
Oh man, it's always a great question. Being in the field for months on end with a crew of people you may or may not know, sharing quarters that are very cramped, sometimes very gross and stinky as they get longer and longer into the field season. You go through ups and downs throughout a whole project. But the one thing that I kind of always remember that just scared the living daylights out of me, but we were out in the Bahamas working on that 16th century shipwreck I was telling you about. And we have our vessel that we're working off of, we're diving off of it. It's moored directly over the top of our site. So it's pretty shallow and clear water out there, as you can imagine. So you can see the shipwreck from below you when you're standing on the back of the boat. But we had one of our supporters come on out and see the site. We always want to share this with the public when we can, especially those that help fund or help support the projects. And so they brought their boat out, and I was just on land, and I was coming out to greet them on the boat. And when we got out there, it kind of felt a little different, like the whole boat situation, it just didn't seem quite right. But I was saying hi to the gentleman. Great for coming out, and then we want to say, stick your head over and let's take a look at the shipwreck. You just have to put a mask on and you can see what's below you. But what none of us had noticed at the time, but that he had moored up his boat directly off of ours, like tied to the side of it, because that was just easy to do. But we were in a pretty strong current. And so the combined weight of both of those boats pulling on one of the anchors actually made the anchor slip about 30, 40 feet. And so the anchor drug on the bottom and all the boats shifted a little bit to the side so that when we stuck our heads underwater to look at the shipwreck, it was completely gone. And I had never been so confused and scared. Like, here's my first big project I'm running and I lost the shipwreck. That didn't make any sense whatsoever. And thank God we had a great captain with us who was like, oh, no way, okay, that's what happened. And we were able to cinch up the boat, get the other one off, moor it separately. All was well and good. But yeah, that moment I had never felt so hollow and scared and alone in my whole life. But as you say, you get to look back on those things and laugh. But it was definitely most of the way through the field season too. So you were exhausted and hoping everything's going well, and then all of a sudden you've lost your entire boat.
We usually don't think of archaeological sites as getting up and walking off. So I'm sure that was a pretty scary.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and with the current, you're always worried about losing some of the material. It's like excavating a land site in a hurricane. There's constant flow of energy over the top of your site. So we're using sandbags to put it on and weight things down and keep them there. But we had opened a lot of that up for a photo model to take pictures of the site and then to show our guest that was coming out. And then all of a sudden, it's like everything blew away within 5 minutes. That was terrifying. But nope, that didn't happen, thankfully. So
I'm glad that wreck is still safely tucked away in the Bahamas.
Still safely tucked away, yeah.
Excellent. Well, here's our big topic, our big question. How do you think archaeology can help save the world?
Oh, actually, this is a great one. But for someone that's always been looking for which career path you wanted to take and all that, you start to get lost in how do you justify it, It always made sense to follow something that you love, that you're passionate about. But then at the same time, heck, I like movies or video games, but I didn't necessarily want to pursue a career in it because I didn't know if I would feel fulfilled with it over time, that kind of thing. But with archaeology, and it kind of grew with me over time, but we really have a problem with treasure hunting within the maritime archaeology world. And so a lot of sites are getting looted and destroyed as people are looking for gold and silver and they want to sell it off to an auctioneer. And if that happens, we lose all those artifacts. We don't get to follow where it went. And when you disturb any archaeological site, underwater or on land, you're losing information because it's the context that an archaeologist is after, not just the object. So finding that we can use our career path as a way to help preserve heritage worldwide via helping to hopefully stop treasure hunting, especially in countries like the Bahamas or throughout the Latin American and Caribbean region. That's been pretty powerful for me as an individual getting into this field. But I also find that a lot of regions can really benefit from a non-industrial type of profit, type of income that a country can generate via cultural heritage tourism. And so if you're able to document and record and protect your heritage sites and make them accessible to the public, in some cases, you've created a multi-million, sometimes tens of millions of dollar industry that tourism will come, your own people can enjoy. You can help create a stronger identity for yourselves and for local communities, connecting you to the past, which is a very powerful thing. And so by promoting heritage tourism and research and study in museums of archaeology, you can do a lot of social good and really improve the world you're in and help people that are disadvantaged or don't have access to certain resources and things like that. So I kind of made that connection as I was going through my work in the Bahamas, and it's been something that stuck with me and helps kind of keep the things going, especially when you're stuck in a lab, late hours, writing reports and all the rest.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, that's one of the reasons that I became a public archaeologist specifically, was to kind of help bring those stories to light and really lean into what you're talking about. So
absolutely, FPAN has been great at that, and that's what's really impressive, is that it's one of the few states here in Florida that has such a network that's actually getting these sites exposed to the public in safe ways, educational ways. And so you're able to generate a massive tourism economy here in Florida because of that. It's pretty great.
It makes it easy when we have great partners like LAMP. So.
Oh, right? I know.
All right. So I have one last question for you. What's keeping you sane during this quarantine?
Yes, sanity. That's been one of the things we've all been pursuing. I'm one of the fortunate few that I still do have a job. I get to work from home, which is great. We've had a lot of projects. We were very busy over this last year. So diving into work, working with photo models, making drawings, writing up our reports. We're also been very fortunate to get a big grant this last year, so we're in preparation of that. So all these things have been helping to keep sanity alive. But my wife is in the healthcare field. She's one of the essential workers. And so it's been challenging and pretty stressful at times. And so getting to have our son, he's about 1.5 years old, here, getting her home, getting to still spend some more family time. That's kind of been a real big benefit for us. So I know a lot of people are pulling their hairs out right now because their kids are usually in school or they have to do so many other things, including work from home. But yeah, between family and work and all that, it's been just a blessing to have those two things. So that's kind of been my rock so far in this time period.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. Great to hear from you. And thanks to everyone for watching. And we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Cheers. And stay happy and safe out there.